Welcome to Twi Reads. Subscribe to follow all our latest adventures. Story begins. When I opened my eyes, I realized I'd transmigrated into a BL novel, not as the protagonist, not as the love interest, but as the forgettable side character whose only purpose was to get rejected by the main character in Chapter 3, cry pathetically, and disappear from the story forever. Great. Just great. The novel was called Destined Hearts, a classic enemies-to-lovers story set in an elite university. Adrian Cole, the protagonist, was a scholarship student with a heart of gold and a spine of steel. He never backed down from anyone, especially not from the arrogant, wealthy students who looked down on him. And then there was Damien Frost, the main love interest, cold, calculating, heir to the Frost Empire. He started out despising Adrian for his defiance, but gradually fell deeply in love with him. Their romance was the kind that made readers stay up until 3 a.m, crying into their pillows. As for me, I was Oliver Hayes, a minor character who confessed to Adrian in Chapter 3, got gently rejected and was never mentioned again. My role was simple: show that Adrian was desirable, but loyal to his destined love. Except I didn't want to confess to Adrian. I remembered the novel well enough to know how this story went. Adrian and Damien would go through hell and back for each other. They were soulmates, destined, written in the stars and all that poetic nonsense. Why would I willingly step into that narrative just to get my heart broken? So I made a decision. I would avoid Adrian Cole at all costs, rewrite my pathetic storyline, and live peacefully until graduation. Simple plan. Foolproof, really. Except I forgot one crucial detail. The novel's plot had a way of dragging people back in. It was a sunny Monday morning when I first saw him. Adrian Cole, standing in the hallway, books clutched to his chest, chin held high despite the sneers from the wealthy students around him. He had that protagonist glow, that magnetic quality that made you want to root for him. I immediately turned and walked in the opposite direction. "Hey, wait!" I froze. "Please don't be talking to me." "You drop this." I turned slowly. Adrian was holding out my student ID, a gentle smile on his face. Up close, he was even more striking. Warm brown eyes, a kind expression that seemed genuine despite everything he'd been through. "Oh, thanks." I took the ID quickly, avoiding eye contact. "You're Oliver Hayes, right? We're in the same literature class." "Yeah, I have to go." I practically ran away, leaving Adrian standing there looking confused. Step 1 of my plan: avoid the protagonist. Check, except avoiding Adrian Cole was harder than I thought. He sat 2 rows ahead of me in literature class. He was in the library every afternoon, always at the same table by the window. He ate lunch in the cafeteria at exactly 12:30. And somehow, despite my best efforts, we kept running into each other. "Oliver, right?" He approached me in the library one afternoon. "Do you understand the assignment Professor Williams gave us? I'm a bit confused about the symbolism analysis." I stared at my textbook, refusing to look up. "It's pretty straightforward, just analyze the recurring motifs." "Could you maybe explain a bit more? I'd really appreciate it." This was dangerous territory. In the original novel, Oliver and Adrian became study partners, which led to Oliver developing feelings, which led to the confession, which led to the rejection. Not happening. "Sorry, I'm really busy. Maybe ask someone else." I gathered my books and left, ignoring the hurt look on his face. I felt guilty, but it was necessary. I couldn't let the plot trap me. But if I thought avoiding Adrian would keep me safe, I was dead wrong. Because while I was busy staying away from the protagonist, I accidentally caught the attention of his rival, Damien Frost. I first noticed him watching me during literature class. Those ice-blue eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Damien Frost was beautiful in a dangerous way, like a perfectly sharpened blade. Tall, elegant, with features that belonged on a magazine cover. He usually ignored everyone except Adrian, their rivalry the stuff of campus legend. So why was he staring at me? I tried to ignore it. Maybe he was just spacing out. Maybe I was imagining things. But then it happened again. In the cafeteria, in the library, walking across campus. Everywhere I went, I felt those cold eyes following me. It was unsettling. Things came to a head on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was hurrying across the quad, trying to get to my dorm before the downpour got worse, when someone grabbed my wrist. I spun around, ready to tell off whoever it was, and found myself face to face with Damien Frost. Up close, he was even more intimidating. He towered over me, raindrops clinging to his dark hair, his expression unreadable. "Oliver Hayes," he said, my name sounding strange in his deep voice. "We need to talk." "About what?" I tried to pull my wrist free, but his grip was firm. "About why you're avoiding Adrian Cole." My heart sank. Of course he'd noticed. Damien noticed everything about Adrian. "I'm not avoiding anyone. Now let go." "Don't lie to me." His eyes narrowed. "You go out of your way to stay away from him. You leave rooms when he enters. You rejected his request to study together. Why?" "That's none of your business." "Everything concerning Adrian is my business." I yanked my wrist free, anger overriding my fear. "You mean everything concerning your rivalry with him is your business? Look, I'm not interested in getting involved in whatever complicated enemies to lovers dance you two have going on. Leave me alone." I stormed off, leaving Damien standing in the rain. That should have been the end of it, but Damien Frost wasn't the type to let things go. The next day, he was waiting outside my first class. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to walk past him. He blocked my path. "Have lunch with me." "What?" "No. It wasn't a request. Well, it wasn't accepted either." I tried to move around him, but he smoothly stepped in front of me again. Students were starting to stare. Damien Frost talking to someone who wasn't Adrian Cole? This was unprecedented. "One lunch. Answer my questions and I'll leave you alone." I wanted to refuse, but the look in his eyes told me he wouldn't give up easily. And the last thing I needed was Damien Frost making my life difficult. "Fine. One lunch, then you leave me alone." His lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Deal. The campus cafe was crowded during lunch hour, but students practically parted like the Red Sea when Damien walked in. We sat at a corner table, and I felt dozens of eyes on us. Damien ordered for both of us without asking what I wanted. Typical rich kid behavior. "So," I said, crossing my arms, "ask your questions. Why are you avoiding Adrian?" "I'm not." "Don't lie." I sighed. "Look, I barely know Adrian Cole. We're in the same class, that's it. I'm not avoiding him. I'm just living my life. He tried to befriend you. You rejected him. Since when is declining to study with someone a crime?" Damien's eyes studied me intently. Everyone wants Adrian's attention. Everyone wants to get close to him, either to use him or to mock him. But you actively avoid him. Why? "Because I know how this story ends, and I don't want my heart broken," I thought. But I couldn't say that out loud. Maybe I just don't want friends. Liar. The waiter brought our food. Some expensive pasta dish I'd never heard of. I stared at it, suddenly losing my appetite. "You know what I think?" Damien leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. "I think you're afraid of him." "That's ridiculous." "Is it? You flinch every time someone mentions his name. You leave rooms the moment he enters. You're terrified of Adrian Cole, and I want to know why." My hands clenched under the table. Damien was too perceptive, too intelligent. Of course he'd see through my act. "I'm not afraid of him," I said quietly. "I'm afraid of myself." Damien's eyes widened slightly. "Explain." I shouldn't have said anything, but something about Damien's intense focus made the words spill out. "I don't want to like him, okay? Adrian he's the kind of person who's easy to admire, easy to care about. And I know myself. If I let him get close, if I let myself become his friend, I'll start to feel things I shouldn't. So I'm keeping my distance." "Is that what you wanted to hear?" The silence stretched between us. Damien stared at me with an unreadable expression, and I wanted to disappear into the floor. "So you do have feelings for him," Damien finally said, his voice oddly flat. "No, I have the potential to develop feelings for him. There's a difference. That's why I'm staying away." "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." I glared at him. "Excuse me? You're avoiding someone because you might possibly develop feelings for them? That's not self-preservation. That's cowardice." My face burned. Says the guy who bullies the person he likes. Damien's expression darkened immediately. "I don't bully Adrian." "Really? Because from what I've seen, you go out of your way to antagonize him." "That's different." "How?" "Because Adrian can handle it. Adrian fights back. He's not some fragile flower who needs protection." Damien's voice was sharp, defensive, and I don't like him. "Sure you don't." We glared at each other across the table. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Then Damien said something that changed everything. "Have dinner with me tomorrow." I blinked. "What? Dinner? Tomorrow?" 7 o'clock. Are you insane? I just told you I'm trying to avoid developing feelings for anyone, and your solution is to ask me out? I'm not asking you out, Damien said coolly. I'm proposing an arrangement. What kind of arrangement? He leaned back, his expression calculating. You want to avoid Adrian. I want to understand Adrian. You clearly know something about him that I don't. Help me, and I'll make sure Adrian stays away from you. This was a terrible idea. Getting involved with Damien meant getting involved in the main plot, which was exactly what I was trying to avoid. But Damien was right about one thing. Adrian kept trying to befriend me, and it was getting harder to refuse him without seeming like a complete jerk. One dinner, I finally said, and then we're even. Damien smiled, and it was almost genuine. Deal. I should have known one dinner wouldn't be enough. Damien picked me up at 7 sharp live, driving a sleek black car that probably cost more than my family's house. He took me to an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind of place where you needed a reservation months in advance. Isn't this a bit much? I asked as we were led to a private table. I don't do anything halfway, Damien replied. The food was incredible, but I barely tasted it. I was too nervous, too aware of Damien's eyes on me. So, he said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision, tell me about Adrian. What do you want to know? Everything. Why does he never back down? Why does he smile even when people mock him? What makes him so infuriatingly resilient? I thought carefully about my answer. I couldn't reveal I knew this was all from a novel, but I could share what the story had shown me. Maybe because he has nothing to lose, I said slowly. Adrian came here with nothing, no money, no connections, no safety net. Every day he's here is a victory. So why would he back down? He's already at rock bottom. The only direction he can go is up. Damien was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. And what about you? He asked. Where do you stand? What do you mean? You're also on scholarship. You also came from nothing. But you're not like Adrian. You're not fighting. You're hiding. The words stung because they were true. Maybe I'm just smarter than Adrian, I said defensively. Maybe I know when to pick my battles. Or maybe you're just a coward. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I'm leaving. Damien caught my wrist. Wait, I'm sorry. That was uncalled for. I'd never heard Damien Frost apologize before. In the novel he was too proud, too arrogant. But here he was, looking almost regretful. I sat back down slowly. I'm not Adrian, I said quietly. I'm not brave like him. I'm not strong like him. I'm just trying to survive, okay? That's all I've ever done. Damien's grip on my wrist loosened, but he didn't let go. His thumb brushed against my pulse point, and I shivered. Survival isn't enough, he said softly. Not for someone like you. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're wasting your potential hiding in Adrian's shadow. Before I could respond, Damien's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. I need to go, he said abruptly. Something came up. He paid the bill and drove me back to campus in silence. When we arrived at my dorm, he didn't immediately let me out of the car. Same time next week, he said. What? No, we agreed on one dinner. I'm changing the terms. Same time next week, Oliver. Don't make me come find you. He drove off before I could argue, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, confused and frustrated, and weirdly disappointed that the evening was over. This was bad. This was very bad. Because I was starting to realize something terrifying. I didn't just need to avoid Adrian Cole. I needed to avoid Damien Frost too. But avoiding Damien proved impossible. He started showing up everywhere. Outside my classes, in the library, at the cafe where I grabbed my morning coffee. It was like he'd memorized my entire schedule. Stop following me, I hissed one morning when he appeared beside me in the coffee line. I'm not following you. I'm courting you. I nearly choked on air. You're what? Courting you, pursuing you, whatever term you prefer. I prefer the term leaving me alone. Damien ordered 2 coffees, handing me my usual order without asking. He'd somehow learned exactly how I took my coffee. Have dinner with me tonight, he said. No. Tomorrow, then. No. I'm very persistent, Oliver. I've noticed. The answer is still no. But Damien didn't give up. He sent food to my dorm. Left books he thought I'd enjoy on my desk. Somehow got my schedule and showed up to walk me to class. It was infuriating. It was also kind of sweet. No, I couldn't think like that. Damien Frost was supposed to fall in love with Adrian Cole. That was the story. That was destiny. I was just a side character who'd accidentally caught his attention by being different. But the more time I spent with Damien, the harder it was to remember that. He was different when Adrian wasn't around, less cold, less guarded. He actually smiled sometimes, small genuine smiles that made my heart skip. We fell into a routine. Damien would find me, I'd pretend to be annoyed, and somehow we'd end up spending hours together. Studying in the library, getting coffee, walking around campus. We talked about everything, books, movies, our childhoods. Damien told me about the pressure of being the Frost heir, how every decision was scrutinized, how he'd never been allowed to just be himself. I told him about my family, about growing up poor, about the scholarship that had changed my life. "You're different from what I expected," Damien said one evening as we sat on a bench overlooking the campus lake. "What did you expect?" "I don't know, someone more ordinary, I suppose." "I am ordinary." "No, you're not." He turned to face me, his eyes intense. "You're brilliant and kind and stronger than you realize. You just don't see it." My face heated. "You don't know me that well." "I'm getting to know you, and I like what I'm discovering." This was dangerous territory. My heart was racing, and I knew I needed to pull back to remember this wasn't my story. "Damien, we shouldn't." "Don't." He moved closer, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. "Don't tell me we shouldn't. Don't tell me this is wrong. Just let me be honest with you." "Honest about what?" "About the fact that I can't stop thinking about you, about how you've completely consumed my thoughts, about how wrong I was." "Wrong about what?" "About Adrian." He laughed, but it sounded bitter. "I spent so long obsessed with him, convinced that my hatred meant something more, but then you came along, avoiding both of us, wanting nothing to do with either of us, and suddenly I understood." "Understood what?" "That what I felt for Adrian wasn't love. It was obsession, competition. I wanted to beat him, to prove I was better. But with you..." He trailed off, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "With you, I just want to know you, understand you, be near you." I should have pulled away, should have reminded him about the plot, about destiny, about Adrian. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. "Damien, I know you're scared," he continued softly. "I know you think keeping your distance will protect you. But Oliver, you're already in too deep. We both are." He was right. Somewhere between the coffee meetups and the late-night conversations and the gentle touches, I'd fallen for Damien Frost. I'd rewritten my story, avoided my destined rejection from Adrian. But in doing so, I'd stumbled into something even more complicated. Because Damien was supposed to love Adrian. That was how the story went. And if he loved me instead... "What about Adrian?" I whispered. Damien pulled back slightly, his expression conflicted. "What about him?" "You're supposed to... everyone thinks you too." "Everyone's wrong." His voice was firm. "Whatever Adrian and I had, it was never love. I see that now. You made me see that." This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. But looking into Damien's eyes, seeing the sincerity there, I couldn't bring myself to care. "So what now?" I asked. Damien smiled, and it was beautiful. "Now you stop avoiding me. Stop pretending you don't feel this too. Give us a chance." "And if it doesn't work out?" "Then at least we tried, at least we were honest." He leaned in closer, his forehead resting against mine. "I'm tired of following scripts written by other people, Oliver, aren't you?" I was. I was so tired of being a side character, of hiding, of being afraid. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm tired." "Then be with me. Choose this. Choose us." And I did. I kissed him, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as he pulled me closer. It felt like breaking free, like rewriting destiny with our own hands. When we finally pulled apart, Damien was smiling wider than I'd ever seen. "Thank you," he murmured against my lips. "For what?" "For not being what I expected, for being so much more." The next few weeks were the happiest of my life. Damien and I were officially together, though we kept it quiet at first. Not because we were ashamed, but because we wanted to enjoy it without everyone's opinions and expectations. We studied together in the library, had dinner at small restaurants off campus, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. I'd never felt like this before, safe, wanted, seen. But of course, nothing good lasts forever. I ran into Adrian Cole on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was leaving the library when I nearly collided with him. "Oliver." He caught my arm to steady me. "Sorry, I wasn't watching where I was going." "It's okay," I said, trying to step around him. But Adrian didn't let go. He was looking at me with an odd expression, something between confusion and hurt. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Sure." "Did I do something to offend you? At the beginning of the semester, I mean. You always seemed to avoid me, and I never understood why." Guilt twisted in my chest. Adrian had always been kind to me, and I'd treated him like a plague. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't about you." Then what was it about? I hesitated. How could I explain that I'd been avoiding him because I knew he was the protagonist, because I didn't want to become a tragic side character in his story? "I was going through some stuff," I finally said. "Personal stuff. It wasn't about you, Adrian. I'm sorry if I made you feel bad." Adrian's expression softened. "It's okay. I just wanted to make sure we were good." "We're good." He smiled, genuine and warm. "Great. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime? As friends?" Before I could answer, a familiar voice cut through the rain. "There you are." Damien appeared beside me, holding an umbrella. He completely ignored Adrian, his focus entirely on me. "Ready to go?" he asked, though his hand was already sliding around my waist possessively. Adrian's eyes widened. He looked between us, understanding dawning on his face. "Oh," he said quietly. "I didn't know you two were." "Together," Damien finished coolly. "We're together." The tension was thick. Adrian looked uncomfortable. Damien looked territorial, and I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. That's great," Adrian said, though he sounded uncertain. "I should go. See you around, Oliver." He hurried off into the rain, leaving me standing there with Damien. "Did you have to be so cold to him?" I asked. "Yes." "Damien, he wanted to ask you out." Damien's voice was low, dangerous. I could see it in his eyes. "For coffee, as friends." There's no such thing as just friends when it comes to Adrian Cole. Everyone wants him. Everyone falls for him eventually. I turned to face him fully. "Is that what this is about? You're jealous?" "I'm protective. There's a difference." "No, you're being possessive and territorial. Adrian was just being nice." "I don't care." Damien pulled me closer, his eyes fierce. "You're mine, Oliver. I don't share." Part of me should have been annoyed by his caveman routine. But another part, a part I didn't want to acknowledge, found it thrilling. "I'm not a possession," I said, but my voice came out breathier than intended. "No, you're not. You're so much more than that." He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear. "You're everything." And just like that, my annoyance melted away. That night, Damien took me to his apartment off campus. It was sleek and modern and probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years. "Why did you bring me here?" I asked as he poured us wine. "Because I wanted you to myself. No interruptions. No Adrian Cole showing up with his puppy dog eyes." "You're really hung up on Adrian. I'm hung up on keeping what's mine." He handed me a glass, and we settled on his couch. The city lights twinkled outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Tell me something," Damien said after a while. "Do you regret it, choosing me over Adrian?" I looked at him, this beautiful, complicated man who'd somehow become my entire world. "No," I said honestly, "I don't regret it. Not for a second. Even though everyone expected you to fall for him, even though he's the golden boy, the protagonist of everyone's story. Maybe I'm tired of following everyone else's script. Maybe I want to write my own story." Damien set down his wineglass and pulled me into his lap. "And what story do you want to write?" "One where the side character gets the unexpected ending, where he finds happiness in the most unlikely place. With the villain." Damien's lips quirked. "You're not a villain. You're just misunderstood." "Is that what I am?" He nuzzled my neck, his hands sliding under my shirt. "Misunderstood? Damien, tell me to stop and I will." But I didn't want him to stop. I'd spent so long being afraid, holding back, playing it safe. For once I wanted to be reckless. I kissed him, deep and demanding, and felt him smile against my lips. "That's my answer," I whispered. What followed was inevitable. We'd been building to this moment since that first dinner, maybe even since that first conversation in the rain. Damien was gentle and intense all at once, taking his time, making sure I felt cherished. Every touch, every kiss felt like a promise. Afterward, we lay tangled together, and I felt completely content. "I love you," Damien murmured into my hair. My heart stopped. "What?" "I love you, Oliver Hayes. I'm in love with you." 3 months ago, if someone had told me I'd be lying in Damien Frost's arms, hearing him confess his love, I would have laughed. This wasn't supposed to be my story, but it was, and I wouldn't change it for anything. "I love you too," I whispered back. Damien pulled me closer, and I felt his smile against my skin. The rest of the semester passed in a blur of happiness. Damien and I were inseparable. We stopped hiding our relationship, and while it caused some gossip, we didn't care. Adrian and I eventually became friends, though it was awkward at first. He was dating someone new, a sweet guy from his economics class, and seemed genuinely happy. One afternoon, the three of us ended up in the same study group. The tension was palpable at first, but gradually we all relaxed. "You know," Adrian said during a break, "I always wondered why you avoided me so much at the start." I glanced at Damien, who raised an eyebrow curiously. "Honestly, I was intimidated by you," I admitted. "You seemed to have everything figured out. You were brave and strong, and I was not." Adrian laughed. "Are you kidding? I was terrified most of the time. I just couldn't show it." "That's the difference between you and me," I said. "You fought through your fear. I ran from mine." "But you're not running anymore," Damien interjected, his hand finding mine under the table. "You're braver than you think." Adrian smiled, genuine and warm. "He's right, you know. It takes courage to choose your own path. I respect that." Something inside me relaxed. Adrian wasn't upset. He wasn't heartbroken. He'd found his own happiness, just like I'd found mine. We weren't following the script anymore. We were writing new stories, better stories, and mine had the perfect ending. Damien and I graduated together. He took over his family business, and I got a job at a publishing house. We moved into an apartment downtown, adopted a cat named Marble, and built a life together. Sometimes I thought about that original story, about how I was supposed to confess to Adrian, get rejected, and disappear from the narrative. But I didn't disappear. I rewrote my ending. I chose differently, and in doing so I found something better than I ever could have imagined. One evening, as Damien and I sat on our balcony watching the sunset, he turned to me with a serious expression. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's perfect." He pulled out a small box, which is why I want to make it official. My heart stopped as he opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring. "Oliver Hayes, you crashed into my life when I least expected it. You challenged me, changed me, made me better. You're my best friend, my partner, my home. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred my vision. Yes, of course, yes. He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me as the sun dipped below the horizon. I rejected the main character. His rival didn't leave me alone, and I lived happily ever after. Because sometimes the best stories are the ones we write ourselves. The end. Thanks for stopping by. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new tales. This is Twee Reads, where every story finds its own path.